So let's see what we can do with creating a kind of hand-drawn type of effect. So once you've opened your image, the first thing you're going to do is go ahead and duplicate that image. There's a couple ways to do it. You could drag it down here to the new layer, or you can press Control or Command if you're on a Mac, J, and that will duplicate the layer automatically. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go in and make an adjustment to invert this. Now, this is going to look freaky when you first do it. Just press Control or Command I. Let me click on the layer to make it active. So now it does this kind of scary kind of a effect, but what this is going to allow us to do is be able to find the outlines. And then what we're going to do is we're going to convert this to a smart object. By going in here, if you right click on the layer, so over in this empty area, you can do convert to smart object. This is kind of like putting a mask on here. What this is going to let us do is we're going to be able to apply a filter that we can go back and make changes to. If it's not a smart object, you're not going to be able to make adjustments. So something like this, I'm going to just kind of blur this out a little bit. I'm going to go for about maybe 5 or so. We can always come back and make adjustments to that later since it is a smart object. We'll talk even more about what smart objects do and how you're going to be able to use that later on. But now what we're going to do is just so we can kind of see what that effect is, we're going to change this to color dodge. So just right there, that one adjustment has already created kind of a hand-drawn type look, but we're going to push it even further and do more stuff than just that. So it's got kind of you can kind of see some color and stuff in there, but we're going to actually go in and adjust this a little bit more. So I'm going to grab this adjustment layer and we are going to go to levels. And with this levels, what I want to do is I want to start to bring this middle slider down. See what that's doing is it's giving me a little bit more texture in her sweater and in the background. I'm going to start doing this. It's just giving me a little bit more contrast so I can start to see some of the outlines. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add a black and white adjustment layer. So I'm going to come down here and choose black and white. What that does is that just strips the color out of the actual photo. So you can see once again, these layers are just stacked right on top of each other and they're not actually permanently affecting the image that's below. So we are going to now go and we're going to merge all of these layers together. So now this is a little bit of a keyboard gymnastics. You're going to press the Control, Alt, and Shift, or if you're on a Mac, do Command, Option, and Shift. Make sure that your top layer is the one that's selected. If that's not selected, let go of your keyboard. Then click on that layer to make it active and select all 3 and press the letter E. What that does is it smushes them all together onto one layer that's going to allow us to do some other effects on this. So we're going to run a couple filters on this. So we're going to go to Filter. We're going to choose Filter Gallery. And inside of Filter Gallery, I'm going to choose Stylize and choose Glowing Edges. Now to do this, what I want to do is I want to get some of these edges happening here is have the edge width to 1 and drag the slider all the way up to 20 for edge brightness and 15 for smooth. And we'll click OK. So right now it's looking kind of ugly. That's okay. We're going to clean that up here in just a moment. What we're going to do is we're going to now apply another adjustment, but we have to reverse the color again. So I showed you the Control I. You can also go to let's see, where is this? It should allow you to invert the color. I just don't remember where it's at in here. So let's just do Control or Command I again. And so now we've got a little bit of an outline, still not looking exactly the way that I want, but that's okay. Because what we're going to do is we're going to make some blending mode adjustments and we're going to lower the opacity. So with this right here, I'm going to change this to multiply. So right there, it's already helped. And then I'm going to take the opacity and start to bring this down a bit. Now, there's never a perfect number to use. I'm just kind of experimenting a little bit to see which one I like better. Yeah, right about there, about 42% or so. I think that looks pretty good. And then what we're going to do is once you have that drop down, we are actually going to, you can kind of see it's starting to look a little bit more like it's hand-drawn. So when I zoom in, what we're going to do is we're going to add a new layer and we're going to put white on it. So I'm going to click that layer right there for new. And then I'm going to flip the color and I'm going to use the paint bucket. So inside of the gradient tool, there's another one that's called paint bucket that you can click. So what that does is that fills the entire background with white, or that layer, not background. And then what we're going to do is we're going to apply a filter onto that one. What we're trying to do is give off a little bit of texture. So I'm going to go to filter, filter gallery, and then I'm not going to choose stylize. I'm actually going to use texture. I'm going to use this texturizer. This texturizer one's kind of cool because it's got a variety of different textures that you can add in automatically. And depending on where you have the lighting, it's going to change the way that it looks. The relief is how deep and how much contrast there is there. With this one, I'm going to try a sandstone. Increase the relief just a little bit, not too much. Maybe about, what is that, about 8 or 9. And then the scaling, I'm going to go ahead and leave that at, actually I'm going to increase it just a little bit, about 120% or so. And then I'll click OK. What this is going to do is it applies this texture on top, but I want this to blend in with the drawing below. So it almost looks like it's done on paper. So with that, what we're going to do is we're going to change the adjustment layer and we're going to change that to multiply. What multiply does is it actually takes anything that was white and it makes it disappear. So you can see it's just created this little bit of texture. So if I zoom in, you can kind of see before and then after. So it's just giving off the illusion that there's actually what's known as bite. When you're dealing with paper, depending on the texture of the paper, it'll have more bite. It just means that it's actually grabbing on more of the graphite or pencil or whatever it is that you're using to make the drawing. And then we're going to drop this down, the opacity. I think it's a little too heavy, a little too much structure across your face. So I'm going to zoom down just a little bit, maybe make it about 50% or so. And then from there, it's looking pretty good. It's got a pretty good sketch effect. But one of the things that we might experiment with a little bit is coming back to, do you want to make it color? And there's not really much color showing up there. So that's not really giving me like that color wash that I would be looking for. Sometimes that's kind of cool to have that effect with the black and white. But one of the things that we might try is experimenting slightly with this blur. So since this is set up as a smart object, this gives us the ability to go back in and double click, and we can start to play around with the blur to see, do we want more of a drawing? Do we want to have a little bit more of the photo? So it's changing the photorealism. If I move this all the way up, you're not really going to see much change at all as far as the original photo, except for that it's black and white. So with something like this, if you want more of a hand-drawn look, you can lower the amount of blur. If you want a little bit more, you can increase it a little bit more, and it adds a little bit more detail. So with something like that, I'm going to put it at about, I don't know, about 3.2, somewhere around there. And then I'm going to click OK. Going to zoom out, and what we can look at is, I'm going to turn off all those layers for a moment. So there's the before, and there's the after. The settings and all of this kind of stuff will change depending on the photo that you're using and how much contrast there is. But really, the key element is going through and getting the inversion of the colors and then using this levels adjustment to add more contrast, the black and white to strip all the color out, and then using the filter to find the edges. What that does is it strengthens up the darker lines, so it'll give off that illusion. And then we played a lot with the blending modes. Now, not expecting you to memorize every single one of those. I'm going to say that a lot this year, but being exposed to how to do it will be useful if you choose to use this special effect in your finished personal portrait poster that we're going to work on later.